You step into your bathroom this morning. You see it again. That black creeping stain in the corner of your shower, right where the grout meets the tile. You scrubbed it last month. You bleached it last week. It came back anyway. Now imagine never seeing that stain again. Not next month, not next year, not for the next 20 years. And imagine it costing you less than $5 to make it happen. I learned this from an Amish carpenter in Holmes County, Ohio, back in the fall of 2019. His bathhouse was 50 years old. There was not a single speck of mold anywhere. He handed me a small cloth bag and said, "This is all it takes." What he showed me came straight out of a Pennsylvania German building manual from 1887, and the best part is, you do not need to tear out a single tile to use it in the house you already own. Now let me back up for a second, because when I first saw that bathhouse, I did not believe him. I stood there running my hand along the grout lines, looking for the trick. I figured he had just cleaned it that morning. I figured the shower was barely used. But then his wife told me they used that shower every single day, 6 people, 50 years. No mold, no mildew, no scrubbing. I asked him what chemical they used. He laughed at me. He said no chemical. He said the English forgot something their own grandfathers knew before the war. He walked me over to a small wooden shelf above the shower head. On it sat a shallow ceramic dish. Inside that dish were 3 lumps of something white and chalky, about the size of walnuts. He picked one up and handed it to me. It was borax, plain ordinary borax. The same 20 Mule Team borax your grandmother used to wash clothes. The same box that sits on the bottom shelf of the laundry aisle for about $4. Now, before you click away thinking you already know about borax, hear me out. Because what he did with it is nothing like what you have read in any cleaning blog. This is not about sprinkling powder on your tiles. This is about creating something the Amish call a moisture stone. And once you understand how it works, you will never buy another bottle of mold spray for the rest of your life. Here is what mold actually needs to survive. It needs 3 things: moisture in the air, a surface with a pH between 5 and 7, and organic material like soap, scum, or skin cells to feed on. Every commercial mold spray on the market attacks the mold after it has already grown. You are always playing catch-up. You are always losing. The Amish approach flips the entire problem upside down. Instead of killing mold, they make the environment impossible for mold to ever grow in the first place. They raise the pH of the surrounding air and surfaces to above 8. Mold cannot survive above 8. It cannot even begin to form a colony. And borax, when placed in a warm, humid environment, slowly releases boron ions that do exactly that. A study out of Cornell University's Department of Plant Pathology, published in 2003, confirmed that boron compounds inhibit fungal spore germination at concentrations as low as 0.3% in ambient moisture. 0.3%. That is almost nothing, but it is enough to shut mold down completely. Here is how you make the moisture stone. You take 1 cup of borax. You add just enough warm water to form a thick paste, about 3 tablespoons. You pack that paste into a small silicone mold or even a muffin tin lined with wax paper. You let it dry on a windowsill for 48 hours. When it comes out, it will be hard as chalk. That single stone will last between 18 and 24 months in a standard bathroom. You place it on a small dish on the shelf above your shower, or on the back of your toilet, or tucked into the corner of the tub surround. Every time the room heats up from a hot shower, the stone releases a microscopic mist of boron into the humid air. That mist settles on every surface. It coats the grout, it coats the caulk, it coats the underside of the shower curtain, and mold cannot grow on any of it. 1 stone. $4 of borax, 20 years of protection if you replace it every 2 years. That is what the man in Holmes County was doing, and his father did it before him, and his grandfather did it before that. Now here is where the story gets darker, because you have to ask yourself, why did nobody tell you this? Why is every hardware store shelf stacked 10 feet high with mold sprays that cost $8, $12, $15 a bottle, when a $4 box of borax lasts a lifetime? I dug into that question for months, and what I found made me angry. Back in 1946, right after the war, The American chemical industry had massive surplus production capacity. Factories that had been making military supplies needed new markets. The household cleaning industry exploded almost overnight. Companies like Procter Gamble, Clorox, and Lysol pushed hundreds of new products into American homes. And they needed to convince housewives that the old ways did not work anymore. There is a marketing document from 1952 from a firm called Batten Barton Durstine Osborn that laid out the strategy in plain language. It said, and I am paraphrasing here, "The goal is to make traditional home remedies feel primitive, unsanitary, and beneath the modern American housewife." That document is in the archives at Duke University. You can look it up. Borax was one of the biggest casualties. It went from being in every American home to being nearly forgotten in about 15 years. Not because it stopped working, it works better than anything on the market today, but because there was no profit margin in a $4 box that lasted 2 years, the Amish never got the memo. They kept doing what worked, and that is exactly why an 80-year-old bathhouse in Holmes County has cleaner grout than a bathroom you renovated last spring. Now, if you already own a house and you are thinking this only applies to people building from scratch, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. You do not need to tear out your tile. You do not need to redo your grout. You do not need to hire anyone. What you do is this. Before you place your first moisture stone, you take a soft toothbrush and you scrub every grout line with a paste made of borax and hydrogen peroxide 1:1. You let it sit for 20 minutes, you rinse it off. That kills every existing mold spore hiding in the porous grout. Then you take a second batch of borax paste, thinner this time, and you paint it along your caulk lines with a small foam brush. Let that dry overnight. It seals boron directly into the caulk itself. Any mold trying to grow back has to fight through a boron barrier first. It cannot. Then you place your moisture stones, one in the shower, one near the toilet, one under the sink if you have a cabinet down there. Total cost, $5 and change. Total time, about 90 minutes on a Saturday morning, and that bathroom will stay mold-free longer than the roof over your head. I did this in my own house in the spring of 2020. Small master bath, 40-year-old grout, the kind of stains you cannot scrub out no matter what you buy. Within 3 weeks, the grout started lightening on its own. Within 2 months, it looked like new grout. That was almost 5 years ago. I have not touched a bottle of mold spray since. And listen, what I just showed you is one page torn out of a much bigger book. The Amish carpenter in Holmes County walked me through dozens of these systems over the years. Everything from keeping a root cellar at 52 degrees without electricity to a wood-ash mixture that seals a foundation better than modern tar. I put the full 3-volume collection together, and it is called the Complete Field Vault. There is a special limited time offer on it right now, and you will find it linked in the description, or you can scan the QR code on the screen. That is the rest of the buried archive. But let me get back to what happens next, because there is still one piece of this mold puzzle I have not told you about yet. Because here is the thing, the moisture stone stops new mold from growing. The paste kills what is already there. But there is a third element that the Amish use, and this is the part I never see mentioned anywhere. Not in any homesteading forum, not in any old cleaning manual. This is the piece that got passed down by word of mouth only. They call it the breathboard. Now stay with me here, because this is the piece that ties everything together. And this is the one that made me realize I had been fighting a losing battle for 30 years of home ownership. A breathboard is a thin piece of untreated eastern red cedar, cut to about 6 inches by 10 inches, roughly a 1/4 inch thick. You can buy a small cedar plank at any hardware store for about $3. The Amish soak that cedar in a warm borax solution for 72 hours, 1 cup of borax to 1 gallon of hot water. The cedar drinks the borax deep into its fibers. Then they let it air dry for a full week in a shaded spot. That single board gets nailed or leaned against the wall inside the bathroom, up near the ceiling in the highest corner where humid air collects. Cedar naturally releases compounds called thujaplicins, which are already antifungal. Cornell tested them back in 1998, but when you saturate cedar with borax first, you get a compound effect. The cedar releases both thujaplicin and boron ions into the air every time the room heats up. A single breathboard, made properly, protects a bathroom for 15 to 20 years. It costs about $3 in materials. And the reason you have never heard of it is that it was preserved almost entirely inside one small community in Lancaster County, passed from grandfather to grandson, never written down, until a Penn State Extension researcher named Jonas Weaver documented it in a 1978 oral history project called the Plain Sect Domestic Practices Survey. That document sat in a university archive for 40 years before anyone thought to look at it again. That is the piece I was missing. That is the piece the chemical companies never had a chance to bury because it was never public in the first place. You combine those three things, the stone, the paste, the breathboard, $5, one Saturday, and you have a bathroom that will outlast every mold spray, every fancy caulk, every anti-mildew paint on the market. Your grandchildren will be scrubbing their showers with expensive chemicals while yours stays clean by doing absolutely nothing. And that is what these old ways really give you. Not just a clean shower, they give you back the hours of your life you were spending on your knees with a spray bottle. They give you back the money you were handing over to companies that made sure you never learned any better. They give you back a piece of knowledge that belonged to your great-grandparents before it was quietly taken away. If you are the kind of person who believes that real wisdom got pushed aside to protect somebody else's bottom line, then you already know why this channel exists. You already know why you clicked. And you already know what to do next. Now here is what I want to hear from you. Do you have a spot in your house right now, a corner of the shower, a windowsill, a basement wall, where mold keeps coming back no matter what you do? Tell me where it is in the comments below. Just one sentence, I read every one, and I am putting together the next video based on what you tell me. And if you want to keep recovering what was taken from us, subscribe. Not to support a channel, but to join the people who are quietly putting these old systems back into their own homes, one weekend at a time. The next video coming out this week is about a wood ash mixture the Amish use to keep basements dry, and it costs less than a cup of coffee. You do not want to miss that one. I will see you there. Before you go though, I want to sit with you for a few more minutes because there is more to this story than a $5 hack and a clean shower. There's a whole way of thinking that most of us have been quietly walked away from, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. So stay with me, because the next part is where it really starts to make sense. Let me take you back to a farmhouse in central Pennsylvania in the winter of 1943. There was a woman named Edna Yoder, and she kept a household ledger the way some people keep a diary. Every purchase, every trade, every jar of preserves, every yard of fabric, that ledger still exists. It sits in a small historical collection in Lancaster County, and if you flip to the pages from January through March of that year, you will see something that stopped me the first time I read it. She spent a total of 11 cents on cleaning supplies for the entire winter. 11 cents. That was 2 boxes of borax and a small tin of washing soda. Everything else, every scrub, every polish, every deodorizer, every mold treatment came from her pantry, her stove, her garden, or her wood stove. And her house, by every account from the neighbors who visited, smelled like cedar and bread and clean linen. Now compare that to the average American household today. According to data pulled from consumer spending surveys in 2022, the typical family spends somewhere between $600 and $800 a year on cleaning products. That is not counting the paper towels, the sponges, the replacement heads, the specialty tools, just the chemicals. $800. And for what? For a house that still gets moldy? For a shower that still needs scrubbing every weekend? For a bathroom that still smells like a swimming pool an hour after you clean it, and then like mildew again by Wednesday? Edna Yoder would have laughed. Not cruelly, she would have laughed the way an old woman laughs when a child tries to explain something she figured out 60 years ago. And here is the part that really gets me. The knowledge she used was not secret. It was not hidden in some dusty book. It was passed from her grandmother to her mother to her, in the kitchen, on the porch, in the barn, over decades of ordinary Tuesdays. It was the water of the culture. And then, somewhere between the end of the Second World War and the moon landing, that water got drained, not all at once, slowly, one television commercial at a time, one magazine ad at a time, one home economics textbook at a time, rewritten to feature branded products instead of pantry staples. There is a woman named Ruth Schwartz Cowan who wrote a book in 1983 called More Work for Mother. If you have never read it, put it on your list. She was a historian at Stony Brook, and she spent years digging through household manuals, appliance advertisements, and family records from the 1890s all the way through the 1970s. And what she found was not what anyone expected. She found that as household technology advanced, as we got washing machines and vacuum cleaners and dishwashers and every miracle product under the sun, the amount of time women spent on housework did not go down. In some cases, it went up, because the standard kept rising. The bar kept moving. What used to be clean was suddenly not clean enough. What used to smell fine now needed to smell like a mountain breeze. What used to be a 5-minute wipe down now needed a whole arsenal of specialized products, each one for a different surface, each one with its own instructions, each one with its own price tag. That is not progress. That is a treadmill. And somebody is selling you the shoes. So when I tell you that a bar of laundry soap and a piece of cedar can keep your shower from molding, I am not just giving you a tip. I am handing you back a piece of the shore. I am saying, come back to the water. It is still here. It never actually went away. It just got covered over with plastic bottles and jingles and pastel labels that promise you the world. Now let me get into some of the specifics, because I know some of you are the kind of people who want to understand exactly why this works, not just that it works, and I respect that. My grandfather used to say that a man who does not understand his own tools is a man who is one bad day away from being helpless. So let us understand the tools. The reason a bar of pure fatty soap resists mold has to do with something called saponification. When you take animal fat or plant oil and combine it with lye, which is potassium hydroxide or sodium hydroxide, you get a chemical reaction that produces soap and glycerin. In an old-fashioned bar, the glycerin stays. In a modern commercial bar, most of the glycerin is stripped out and sold separately, often to the lotion industry, because glycerin is a very profitable ingredient on its own. What you are left with, in that modern bar, is a harsher product that dries out faster, cracks more easily, and does not hold its shape in a humid environment. It also does not have the same natural resistance to microbial growth, because glycerin, contrary to what you might think, actually acts as a mild humectant and preservative when it is part of a whole soap matrix. An old-fashioned bar of Fell's Naphtha or Kirk's Castile or a homemade tallow soap from a farm supply store still has that intact structure. It sits in your shower and it does not break down. It does not turn into slime. It does not feed mildew. It just sits there, quietly doing its job, week after week, sometimes for months, until it slowly wears down to a sliver. And even that sliver you can toss into a mesh bag with the next new bar and keep using it. Nothing wasted, nothing thrown away. That is how our great-grandparents lived, and it is how they stayed out of debt, and it is how they had the money to buy land and build barns and send their children to school without borrowing a dime. The cedar works on a different principle entirely. Cedar contains a group of compounds called thujaplicans, which are naturally occurring fungicides. The tree evolved them over millions of years to protect itself from rot in wet forest environments. When you put a piece of cedar in a damp bathroom, those compounds slowly release into the surrounding air, and they inhibit the growth of the exact species of mold that most commonly colonize showers. Cladosporium, Aspergillus, Penicillium, Stachybotrys in the worst cases. All of these are inhibited to some degree by the volatile oils in western red cedar and eastern red cedar. This is not folk medicine. This is documented in peer-reviewed forestry and wood science journals. The Japanese have known this for over 1,000 years, which is why traditional Japanese bathhouses, called sento and onsen, were built out of hinoki, which is a cedar cousin with even stronger antifungal properties. Those bathhouses, some of them still standing after 3 or 4 centuries, do not have mold problems. They just do not. And they get used by hundreds of people a day in some of the most humid conditions imaginable. Meanwhile, the American shower, built out of fiberglass and vinyl and grouted tile, starts growing mold within weeks of installation. And the answer we get from the industry is not, hey, maybe we should build showers out of materials that resist mold. The answer is, buy this spray, buy this scrubber, buy this bleach pen, buy this daily shower mist, buy. I want to tell you about a man I met a few years ago. His name was Harold, and he was 87 years old when I sat with him on his front porch in eastern Tennessee. He had built his own house in 1962, and he had built the bathroom out of poplar and cedar planks, sealed with a beeswax and linseed oil mixture that he made himself in a double boiler on his kitchen stove. That bathroom, when I saw it in 2019, was 57 years old. 57 years. And there was not a speck of mold anywhere. Not in the corners, not behind the toilet. Not in the grout, because there was no grout. Not on the ceiling. The wood had aged to a warm honey color, and the whole room smelled faintly of the woods. I asked him what his secret was, and he looked at me like I was a little slow. He said, "Son, I just used what worked. My daddy showed me, his daddy showed him. That is all it is." That is all it is. And yet somewhere along the line, we decided that this kind of knowledge was old-fashioned, backward, country, something to be embarrassed about, something to leave behind as we moved into the modern world of convenience and progress. And what did we get in exchange? We got houses that fall apart in 20 years. We got bathrooms that need to be gutted and redone every decade. We got a cleaning industry that takes $800 a year out of our pockets and gives us back a house that never really feels clean. I do not think that is a good trade. I think we got robbed. And I think the first step in getting our lives back is admitting that we got robbed, and then quietly, without making a fuss about it, starting to do things the old way again. One shower at a time. One pantry at a time. One weekend at a time. Now, I want to address something that comes up in the comments every single time I make a video like this. Somebody always says, well, if these old methods were so great, why did people stop using them? And that is a fair question. It deserves a real answer. Here is what actually happened. After the Second World War, the United States had built up an enormous industrial chemical manufacturing capacity. Factories that had been producing explosives, solvents, and specialty chemicals for the war effort suddenly had nothing to do. The companies that owned those factories were not about to shut them down. They needed new markets, and so they turned their attention to the American home. Chemicals that had been developed for degreasing airplane engines became kitchen cleaners. Compounds developed for military sanitation became bathroom sprays. And a massive advertising campaign, one of the largest in history, went to work convincing the American housewife that her mother and grandmother had been living in filth and that only these new scientific products could save her family from disease. Look up the ads from the late 1940s and early 1950s. They are extraordinary. They show women in pearls and heels, terrified of invisible germs, saved only by a bottle of some new miracle product. The word germ was repeated over and over, sometimes with cartoon illustrations of tiny monsters lurking in the sink, on the counter, in the toilet bowl. Fear was the product. The chemical was just the delivery mechanism, and it worked. It worked so well that within one generation, the knowledge of how to keep a house clean without industrial chemicals was largely gone from mainstream American life. The women who had learned it from their mothers stopped teaching it to their daughters because they had been convinced that it was inferior. The daughters grew up assuming that a clean house required a store-bought product. And now their granddaughters, which is many of you watching this, are wondering why nothing ever really works, why the mold keeps coming back, why the money keeps flowing out, and why nobody ever taught them any of this. Nobody taught you because the teaching got interrupted. That is not your fault. That is not your mother's fault. It is not even really your grandmother's fault. It is the result of a very deliberate, very well-funded campaign to replace household knowledge with household consumption. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. But here is the good news. The knowledge is not actually gone. It is just quiet. It exists in old books, in old ledgers, in old Amish and Mennonite and Appalachian and rural communities that never fully bought in. It exists in the memories of people like Harold and in the pages of women like Edna Yoder. And it exists increasingly in small corners of the internet where people are quietly digging it back up and sharing it with anyone who wants to listen. That is what this channel is. That is what we are doing here. We are digging it back up. Let me give you a few more practical things you can do this week, because I know some of you are going to finish this video and want to act on it immediately. That is the kind of person I love, by the way. Not the kind who watches and nods and does nothing, the kind who watches and then walks to the hardware store on Saturday morning. First, in addition to the soap and cedar in your shower, take a small mason jar, fill it about a third of the way with baking soda, add 10 drops of tea tree oil, and set it on the back of your toilet or on a shelf in the bathroom. Do not put a lid on it. Just leave it open. That jar will absorb moisture and release a very mild antifungal vapor into the room for about 6 weeks before it needs to be refreshed. Cost of the jar of baking soda, about $1. Cost of the tea tree oil, about $6 for a bottle that will last you 2 years. Total ongoing cost, pennies per month. Second, if you have a bathroom fan, and most of you do, start actually using it. I know this sounds obvious, but the number of people who never turn on their bathroom fan or who turn it off the moment they step out of the shower is astonishing. A fan should run for at least 20 minutes after every shower. 20 minutes. Set a timer if you have to, or better yet, install a simple mechanical timer switch. You can get one at any hardware store for about $15, and it will pay for itself in prevented mold within a single season. Third, and this is one that almost nobody talks about, leave your shower curtain or your shower door open after you shower. Not part way, all the way. The air needs to circulate. A closed shower is a mold factory because the moisture has nowhere to go and the surfaces stay wet for hours. An open shower dries out in 30 or 40 minutes. That is the difference between a shower you have to scrub every week and a shower you barely have to touch for months. Fourth, once a month, take about a cup of white vinegar, warm it slightly, and wipe down the corners, the grout lines, and the tracks of your shower door. Not because you have mold, because you are preventing it. Vinegar is about 5% acetic acid, and acetic acid disrupts the cell walls of mold spores before they can establish a colony. A gallon of white vinegar costs about $3 and will last you a year if you use it just for this purpose. Compare that to the $12 bottle of shower cleaner that lasts you 6 weeks. Fifth, and this is the one that people resist the most for some reason, stop using bleach. I know, your mother used bleach, your grandmother used bleach, everyone uses bleach. But here is the thing, bleach does not actually kill mold on porous surfaces. It bleaches the color out of it so you cannot see it anymore, but the roots, which are called hyphae, penetrate down into grout, caulk, and drywall, and bleach does not reach them. Worse, bleach is mostly water, and once the chlorine evaporates, which happens quickly, you have essentially just watered the mold. That is why the mold always comes back within a week or two of a bleach treatment. You did not kill it, you fed it and made it invisible for a little while. What actually kills mold at the root is either hydrogen peroxide, which you can buy at any pharmacy for about $1 a bottle, or a saturated borax solution, which is what our great-grandmothers used before hydrogen peroxide was widely available. Spray it on, let it sit for at least 10 minutes, and then wipe it down. Do that once, do it properly, and combine it with the preventive measures I have already described, and you will not see that mold again. I want to close with a story that I think about a lot. When I was maybe 9 or 10 years old, I spent a summer with my grandmother in a small house she had lived in for almost 50 years. That house had one bathroom, and it was tiled from floor to ceiling in this pale green tile that had been installed in the 1950s. And it was spotless. Not new looking, it was old. You could see the age in the grout in the fixtures and the little chips on the corners of some of the tiles, but it was clean, not chemically clean, not bleach clean, just clean. The kind of clean that comes from a place being well cared for by someone who knew what she was doing. I remember asking her one day how she kept it so nice, and she took me into the little linen closet and showed me a shelf. On that shelf there was a bar of soap, a jar of baking soda, a bottle of vinegar, a small tin of borax, and a cedar block wrapped in a piece of cheesecloth. That was it. That was her entire cleaning arsenal for a bathroom that had lasted 50 years without a single renovation. She looked at me and she said, "Honey, people spend a lot of money trying to fix problems that would never happen if they just did a few small things right in the first place." I did not understand what she meant at the time. I was 9. I wanted to go outside and catch frogs. But that sentence stuck in the back of my head somewhere, and it came back to me years later when I was standing in my own bathroom holding a $40 bottle of some specialty mold remover, looking at a wall of mildew that had come back for the 4th time in a year, and I thought, my grandmother would have solved this with a bar of soap. So I tried it, and it worked, and I have been slowly, patiently, one room at a time, one habit at a time, putting my grandmother's system back into my own life ever since. And my house is cleaner than it has ever been, and my grocery bill is lower, and my time is my own again. And when I walk into my bathroom in the morning, it smells like cedar, not like a chemical plant. And that, more than anything, is what I want for you. You do not need to overhaul your entire life this weekend. You just need to start with one thing: the bar of soap, the piece of cedar, $5, one trip to the store, one small act of quiet rebellion against a system that has been picking your pocket for 70 years. That is where it begins. And once it begins, it does not stop, because you will notice within about a month that something has shifted. Your bathroom is easier, your weekend is longer, your wallet is a little heavier, and a small voice in the back of your head, the voice of a grandmother or a great-grandmother you may never have met, will whisper, "There you are, welcome home." So go do it, this weekend. Do not overthink it, do not research it for 6 months, do not wait until the perfect moment. Just go, get the soap, get the cedar, put them in your shower, and come back here and tell me what happened. I will be waiting, and I will read every word.